On this week's episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast, we have our second episode with Johnston County Manager Rick Hester. In this episode, we talked to him a little bit about him growing up in Elizabethtown, his time working for Johnston County. He started with Johnston County in 1987, the development of water and sewer districts in the county, the start of zoning in Johnston County in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, the county's funding and what the county does for the Johnston County school system, for the Sheriff's Department and the Department of Social Services, and a little bit about how important agriculture is for Johnston County. So listen in. I think you will find this conversation enlightening and fascinating, and you will learn more about your county.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden, and on today's episode, we have the second episode with County Manager Rick Hester. So if you didn't catch the first one, go back and listen to the first episode that ran a few weeks ago where we talked to him about his growing up in Elizabethtown, his playing baseball at Clemson and in the Texas Rangers organization, his coming to Johnston County in 1987 and still being here serving the citizens of this county till this time, and a little bit about the $350 million budget that he's responsible for drafting for our county each year. On this episode, we're going to talk to him a little bit again about where he's from and all of that stuff for those of you that listened to the first one. And we're going to talk a little bit about the individual departments that he oversees on a daily basis that makes up Johnston County. There's 20 departments, and we're not going to have time on this episode to go through all 20, but we're going to go through the ones that I find the most interesting. And all of these departments affect your life on a daily basis, and you should know about them. But before we do that, I want to ask you to like, follow, subscribe to this podcast wherever you see it, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, or any of the other Instagram, or any of the other Best of Johnston County social media pages, or Apple, where you can find podcasts, or wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube as well, so that you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best Johnston County podcast. The Best Johnston County podcast comes out every single Monday and has now for well over a year, and we're well into over 70 episodes. So go back and listen to some of the previous ones. I think you will find them interesting, and the conversations we've had somewhat timeless. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you, sir.
Right. So anyway, tell everybody who you are, what you do.
All right. I'm Rick Hester, serve as county manager. As you said, I'm from Bladen County originally and I moved here in 1987. So it's great to be here. I love watching the show, and I think you should go national.
Well, I told you, I think you, my wife, I have one neighbor, and one of my son's good friends' moms are the only people who listen to every single episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast. My parents don't even listen to every episode. But anyway, I do appreciate that. And we did start this to try to put out positive information about Johnston County, and that's what we've tried to do. Sure. So growing up, when did it strike you? I know your father was a county commissioner. Yes. When did you think, I'm going to go work in county government?
Well, I always was intrigued by it because of my dad's and I saw the time and dedication he put in as being a county commissioner in Bladen County. And so it was always in the back of my mind, but my goal was to be a Major League Baseball player. And so when that ended in 86, that's when I was thinking about, okay, what I want to do with the rest of my life. I'd like to be in public service. And so I didn't, I thought county manager, I already had kind of a little bit of knowledge about it, not much, but a little bit. But you can't just go right into being a county manager, So I spent 12 years in Johnston County in the planning office and the county manager's office, and learned a lot, and was in position to do this in about 1999.
Well, I think it's neat that you, and I didn't know until we recorded the first episode, that you started in the planning office.
Yes.
When you think about the sheer growth of this area, I mean, you became an expert on zoning and land use and all of that for 12 years before you became the county manager. And that is probably one of the most important things that you have to focus on even now.
Well, I've been here so long that we went out in the community. We didn't have zoning in the late 80s. There was no zoning in the mid 80s. There was no zoning in the county. And so the commissioners at the time said, we probably need to look at having zoning regs. So we went out in the fire departments, opened their doors for us to have community meetings in schools. And we went out and had community meetings about zoning. I remember vividly at night. And I think I'm close to being right on this, but in 89, I think it was, the 4 townships that touch Wake County were established with zoning. And then a couple of years later, countywide zoning came into play.
I did not know that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, zoning, I know people get upset about it, but it is crucial
It is.
to having a livable working community. I was recently in Houston. I've been to Houston now twice in the last 6 months for varying reasons, having not been to Houston in 20 years. And if you've ever been to Houston where the zoning was completely messed up, you can see what it looks like when it's not done correctly. And if any of you have been to Houston, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got churches next to gas stations, next to adult clubs. Like, it is just a mess down there a little bit. And you end up with a lot more sprawl as well. Yeah. And we don't have a major city in Johnston County, but, you know, I think zoning is important.
Yeah, I do too. So that was a big deal in the 1990 time frame for that. And one of the other things that came along about that time was, you know, there wasn't official road names for all these roads in the county. Went through that process, had these public meetings and I call them community meetings, and to establish formal road names for the county. So all the green signs out here you see on the road, I mean, that came about in the sort of the 90, 91 time frame. And I remember clearly when they were installed.
Oh, man.
And then not long after that, we didn't have a lot of water out in the county, public water. Probably it was mostly in the towns, and there was a little bit out here in the Cleveland area, I believe. But so USDA Rural Development, which was Farmers Home back then, I believe, they had a program where they would loan money and do grants for communities that wanted to establish a water district. So we started one in Hopewell. We call it the Hopewell Pisgah District. That's 2 churches in that community. And from there, 15 more of them follow that. Now we have a countywide water district. The purpose of those was there were so many people that were having trouble with their wells, just pure drinking water. I mean, we had folks coming to meetings with water, with jars that looked like apple juice, and that was their water. So those programs were in place for good drinking water, you couldn't use it to try to accelerate growth, or, you know, they had to size it a certain way and all that. So those are some things that I really have some great memories of that I really think later on looking back were important.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, there are some people, as we sit here at 4042, and by the time this runs, it'll be 4036, as Highway 42 is becoming Highway 36 in February of 2025. That's a whole other debate for a whole other day, with US 70 becoming I-42. But, you know, there's still some people in this county that resent the commissioners in the 90s for doing the sewer project here at 4042 that allowed for this commercial growth. And there are some people that are like, if that group of commissioners did not do this sewer district, this wouldn't have happened, and it wouldn't look like this, and we would have our old county back.
Yeah, and I wasn't involved in that particular thing because I wasn't in the details of any of that. So I won't even fake it. I really don't know a lot about that. So
right, yeah. I mean, it's just I've heard people talk about it. I moved here in 2000. The sewer was already here. The county water was already here, and 4042 was on its way. You know, Johnston County had 60,000 residents in 1990.
When I moved in '87, we were about pushing 70,000, somewhere in that ballpark.
Right, and
so now we're 250.
250, right? I mean, that's unbelievable.
Probably 250 and 2 or 3 more since we've been talking.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of people move in. I mean, golly, I think Donna White, one of our state house members, told me that 13 people a day move into her house district. And her house district is basically part of Cleveland, Clayton, and Corinth Holders. Yeah. And that's it. Like just that northwest quadrant of the county.
Sure.
And she said 13 people a day move into that district.
Yep, I don't doubt it.
I mean, it's unbelievable. So So let's talk a little bit about what some of the county departments, that's what we'll
Yeah.
talk about. Let's talk about water and sewer. That's under public utilities.
That's right.
We all pay our water bill.
That's right.
Is it completely self-funded?
Yes, its own business, if you will, enterprise fund. And that's a challenge because, as you said, the folks that use the system are paying for it through their rates. So yes, it was important to try to keep that separate from the general fund with all the things that are the pressures that are on the general fund in terms of, schools, supporting schools, county operations, paying debt, things like that. So yes, it is self-supporting.
Okay, does it have its own board, or
No.
are you in charge of it?
The utilities director reports to me, and of course, obviously, I report to the full board. So,
Okay.
Yes.
So we just opened up a new wastewater treatment plant at the landfill.
That's right.
We're here maybe October, November of 2024. How much capacity did that add, and how much capacity are we still short?
Well, it was like 4 million gallons per day. And then there's already plans in there to continue to expand it. The key was to have an area that could allow for expansions up to 30 million gallons per day in the future. I mean, that's going to take a while.
Right.
But it was important to have that area to be able to do that. So, yes. Now, one of the things with wastewater is not only the capacity sometimes, but it's having the capacity in the line. So in growing communities, that's something you have to watch too. It's one thing, the capacity there, but the lines have to be able to handle it. So that's been some projects that we've been involved with, upsizing some lines too.
Okay. Well, and then the other issue is you can't just build it as much as you want because you have to be able to discharge it into water, and you can only put so much discharge into the news.
That's right.
And stuff like that. Where are we on maybe getting able to discharge maybe into Cape Fear, going on the other side of Benson that will help us up that capacity to deal with this growth?
Yeah, there's a lot of rules in that interbasin transfer kind of thing. I'm not an expert on it, but I know that if you take drinking water from another river, you have to, replace it back, whether it's wastewater or whatever. You have to be able to do that. The interbasin transfer has limits on what you can do there.
Okay.
Now, we do buy some water from Harnett County.
Right. We buy water from Harnett County. Okay.
We do buy water from Harnett County. There's a certain limit you can buy up to. I think it's 2 million gallons per day before you get into interbasin rules.
Okay.
So we're under that. And we work a lot. I'm glad you said that about the water because we partner with a lot of other communities. For example, we buy water from the city of Wilson, and like I mentioned Harnett County. We've got an arrangement with the Raleigh. The main source for water in this county is in Wilson's Mills at the water treatment plant that's right there on the Neuse River.
Okay.
That's the biggest source right there. And then, but there's limits to that too, what you can draw there.
Right. So everybody talks about the growth and maybe we're going too fast, and there's the whole drawbridge syndrome. I'm here. I want to roll up the drawbridge. I don't want anybody else to come here. But people are continuing to come, but they can only come to the amount of sewer and water that you can provide in the county. Our municipalities are all small, and we don't have any major cities in this county. So the county is providing a lot more water and sewer and services than most counties its size because we don't have these bigger municipalities. So explain how that works and the problems that causes.
Yeah, I mean, and Clayton, is becoming, I don't know what their population is. They're moving up there pretty good. They're probably in the 30,000+ population.
Oh, I didn't realize they were that big.
Yeah,
okay.
And I don't have my numbers
Right.
with me. So, but we are probably one of the few counties in North Carolina that has a water treatment plant and a wastewater treatment plant services. Most have different setups where they might partner with a big town, like you said. But for Johnston County and a lot of the other towns, Smithfield has their own water treatment plant. We all try to work together. The county is the largest producer of water, and we partner with towns in the county. We sell water to most of the towns. Some of them have their own wells, though.
Okay.
We got it going in different directions there.
Well, I mean, do we have the capacity to maintain the growth rate that we're at? Are we going to run into Garner and Cary a little bit, but Garner in particular, where they just, and unfortunately Pine Level last year, where they just can't issue any more permits because they can't service it?
Well, I think we're going to have to continue to expand what we have and stay ahead of the curve with that. But I think we've got a good plan in place for that.
Okay, well, cool.
Now, the biggest challenge probably, Jonathan, is water for the long term, and And we had to plan for peak. We had to plan for those days where it's peak usage. And that's a big deal, versus average. Like summertime, we have no rain for a couple of weeks and a lot of irrigation. That drives up to a peak number. We had to be prepared for that, or else we have to put in stringent water use, and we try not to have to do that, So we've got all these different partnerships. We're looking at some shorter term things we can do, and also long term. One of the discussions, and there's been no decisions made, but 12 or 15 years ago, the county bought that rock quarry down in the Princeton area, and that was done for the possibility of a future water treatment plant there. Now, obviously that'll be very expensive and a lot of planning involved, and a lot of planning involved for that. But that's a potential long use kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and I'm hoping that actually comes to fruition, because I think it's a good idea. I know some of the commissioners don't think it's a great idea,
Sure.
But it seems like a good idea to me. There's a place where we can hold a lot of water, and we could work there, and we could serve, because I don't think people realize the western side of this county is growing too. I mean, Pine Level's absolutely eastern side, right? Pine Level is absolutely exploding. Princeton is growing as well. I mean, I think what Venture Development is doing there with the North State Food Hall and all that commercial development there on that side of 95 at exit 97 is going to have the Selma area and Wilson's Mills and Pine Level are going to keep growing. It's not just Clayton and Corinth and McKees Crossroads and Cleveland anymore. I mean, this county is growing everywhere. They've got growth in Benson right now. So it's, I think we got to look at it sort of holistically, because everybody's got growth, and I think that's a positive. Some people say there's a negative. I think it's a positive from a county like Scotland County that's closing schools because they don't have students, and are raising taxes because they don't have a tax base, and they've got more adults not working than working. That's the last number I saw. That is difficult. You know what I mean? We don't have those problems here. We have different problems, but I'll take our problems over those problems any day of the week.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things about Johnston County is we're one of the largest counties in North Carolina, land size. We're in the top 5. This is a huge county, so you drive from Benson to Kenly or from Clayton to Princeton, that's pretty good ride. So we're one of the large. I think Sampson County is the largest county in North Carolina, I believe.
Right. Sampson's the largest landmass. We're also the largest county by population without a major city. I think we're the 10th largest county population-wise, maybe in the state.
Something like that.
And we don't have a major city.
Correct.
I mean, Clayton's growing, but we don't have Fayetteville or Asheville or Charlotte when you think about Wilmington, like New Hanover, so that's a unique thing too. And we have a higher percentage of our population living outside of a city.
About 2/3.
2/3, which is more than most counties as well.
Right.
And that creates its own issues, because, what this county is providing from water and sewer and sheriff and all that is way more. That's what cities do. And so this county is having to provide services like a city over a large landmass, and that's not easy to do.
Right. And it takes a lot of people, we're constantly looking at one of the big priorities for the commissioners is public safety, which I think that's so important. When you think about law enforcement, EMS, 911 communications, but, as the county grows, we're continuously looking at where we have EMS locations. What's the most strategic place to have those? A lot of those are partnered with fire departments, which
Correct.
is great. But the fire departments are growing so much. Sometimes they eventually going to need that space. So
right. Well, and the county just took over. The EMSs often were independent, small businesses and stuff. The county has now taken all of those over in the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
We do not have time on this podcast to go through all of that. Maybe we'll get
That's a whole podcast.
Right. And we may need to get our EMS director is retiring. Maybe we can get him on before he retires. But so they've taken that under. They are still connected largely to the fire departments. The Cleveland Fire Department just opened up its 3rd station on Cornwallis Road. They're very exciting. Chris Ellington and them are doing a tremendous job there as well. But the Sheriff's Department continues to grow. Oh, yeah. I mean, I personally think he needs another squad. I don't know if he thinks that, but I do. I think with this budget thing, I think we need at least 1 squad or 2, which would shrink the patrol districts and get more law enforcement officers out there, because he's running more and more calls every year. Right. Steve Bizzle has been our sheriff since 1998. I think he's done a tremendous job. I think he's the best sheriff in North Carolina, but he needs money.
Yeah. And I think the sheriff's always looking at that too. I'll pass that along to him.
Yeah, right. I always say we need more squads, right? Because I want the patrol districts, like 4042 kind of has its own patrol district, but we need more. Like you almost have to patrol this like a city.
Look, I'll tell you, public safety is so critical. That's the thing I love about local government. I mean, what we do is we're right every day. Like you said, local government doesn't impact people's lives. We hope it's all positive. And I had a personal incident myself. I had a medical episode a couple of weeks ago at my house. And so I'm lucky I've never ridden in the back of an ambulance, but I did that night. Called 911. I didn't call them. Called 911. That's the first step in it, is that 911 call. Next thing you know, I had a first responder and an EMS person at my house taking care of me, putting me in the back of that ambulance, taking care of me, talking to the hospital on the way, telling them so they'll know what they're dealing with. And I was like, wow, how seamless was that? I didn't particularly care to have gone through that night,
Right.
But it was like, man, this is incredible. They do.
Oh, I mean, it's funny. A few years ago, we were cooking and we had a bunch of smoke go off and the fire smoke went off and it's connected to the alarm system. And next thing I know, Chris Ellington is at my door with a fire truck.
Yep.
And I was like, I didn't call you. He said, your alarm system called me. And I was like, I felt so bad that they had come because I'd smoked something I was trying to cook and tried to blow the smoke out. And here they came. I really did appreciate that. I never forgot that. And he wasn't even the chief then. He's now the chief. But I'll never forget that.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
So, as we talked a little bit about the sheriff's department, he does a tremendous job. We talked about water and sewer.
Yeah.
Another thing is the schools. They're the largest single line item, I think, in the county budget. Last year, we gave them over $100 million. I disagreed with that decision, but I'm not an elected county commissioner. What is some of the things why do they get $100 million? What are some of the things they're doing with that money? I know you're not on the school board, but you look at their request every year and they're always asking for more.
So traditionally, I think in North Carolina, counties way back, really the requirement was counties to provide the capital funds, repairs, big renovation projects, things of that nature, and any kind of new construction. And then over the years, there's been more local governments have put more money into the operating side. So each year by May 15th, schools are required to present or to provide their proposed budget to the county, a budget that they have voted on and said, this is what we want to send along. So that's by May 15th. And so that information, and by then I'm pretty close to sharing a full budget with the board. So we try to have that number in the proposed budget if possible because of the timing of it. And then so the commissioners, they kind of weigh that out and look at, all the different, there's so many variables with their budget. It's hard to even, I don't even know if I could even regurgitate all of them,
right.
but there's a lot of things in their budget on the current expense operating side and also on the capital side, outside of a referendum, but just money to keep the facilities in good shape, renovations and that thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the counties traditionally, their job by statute really is to provide the buses, the building,
that's right,
the janitors to clean the building, the desks that are in the building, whatever security the building has. And that's really it. But I know here lately, we now provide over 50 assistant principals with county money, I believe. There's also the county supplement to the teachers' salaries.
That's right.
Which
that is a local teacher supplement.
Right, which is 14%.
Yeah,
I'm not sure the exact number, but that's so that we can help recruit and retain teachers.
Yeah.
The county is also responsible for fixing these buildings and, boilers and chillers. Right. I mean, it could be $1 million, roofs. Yep. So there's a lot of that as well. And I know that the school board is always saying that we have all this deferred maintenance and we need more money for this, that, and the other. And then the other thing I guess that happened was there was a bunch of COVID money and we ended up getting some positions paid for by COVID money. And then the COVID money ran out from the federal government and the school board came to the commissioners and said, we want to keep these positions. And the commissioners agreed to keep most of them, I guess.
I'm not sure. I don't know that they had any recurring cost in there.
Okay.
But I don't have
Right.
that
Well, I mean,
with
you've
me.
looked at it more than I have.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I may be wrong.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at it again.
So it did go up $25 million from, or I don't know, about $25 million from 2023 to 2024's budget, but the student numbers had stayed flat. And so that was a big jump
Well,
when you are serving more students.
Yeah, and you also got, that current expense, I call it current expense, operating supplemental funding. It also flows to the charter schools too, through the school system.
Oh, that's right.
So X amount goes to the school system, and then a percentage of that goes out to News Charter or some of the other charter schools.
We have ALA, we have the one in Clayton as well.
So they don't keep that whole appropriation.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, cool. So, right. And we have more kids going to charter schools in Johnston County.
And like you said, there's so many different alternatives now. Homeschool.
Right. Well, yeah, right. You have the charter schools. You have the homeschool population is growing. You have private schools like Daly's Academy at Flowers Plantation as well. I know that there are other charter schools looking at the Cleveland community. I know where they're talking about trying to put one out here near the Hardys in Cleveland Elementary School. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see that one here in the next 2 or 3 years get built as well.
I do want to add one thing in there, and it kind of relates to it, but we're talking about school funding and all the different things that the commissioners are responsible for. We've talked about reevaluation, I think, in the previous one, but in the last 6 years, the board has funded all these things and dropped the tax rate 11 cents in the last 6 years. So just to want to throw that out there.
Yeah,
because right now we're at 67 cents and it was 78. Now, I get it. Some people say, well, reval comes and, that'll all work itself out, because if this comes out in April, we haven't even gotten to the hard budget stuff. But I did want to mention the last 6 years in non-revaluation years, the board has dropped their rate.
Well, and I think the rate's going to get cut substantially this year with the reevaluation, and when it's all said and done, at least 65% greater value to tax than what we had from the 2019 numbers. And that's how counties get money, right? Like, I don't think people have to understand this, but like, counties can tax property and they get sales tax and they can charge some user fees, and that's it. Like, there's not a lot of other funds. You get some federal funds through DSS and the food stamps and stuff like that.
There might be some investment income when the county, we invest money temporarily to draw, to earn interest on that. So that's another way.
Right. But really, most of its revenue comes from taxing the property that it has.
Property taxes.
Right. Well, one thing that has helped this county is the industrial expansion.
Sure.
I mean, the first Novo expansion was $2 billion with a B, and that's an unbelievable. I went and took a tour of that place. That is absolutely unbelievable. You do not think you're in Johnston County. Like, it is unbelievable, that place. And at that point, that $2 billion for just that building, which is 97 acres under roof, was more than the entire taxable base of the town of Clayton. The houses, the Walmarts, everything. I don't think the taxable base in Clayton was $2 billion when that was built. It may be now. Now Novo is going to build a second one that's about as big as the first one, because they got to make Ozempic. And so that's going to be another $1 billion or $2 billion in one company doing business here and expanding. And that helps tremendously for the county.
Well, the best part about it is those job opportunities for people.
Right. They're high-paying jobs.
And Griffles too.
Right. No, I mean, they're high-paying jobs. They're right here.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, that building is paying taxes on $2 billion, doesn't go to school. It doesn't really call the fire department. It might. It doesn't need. Right. It doesn't need welfare services. You know what I mean? So it is a profit center for the county. I mean, the counties aren't making profit, but like I'm saying, I see it as a net positive, paying that money into the county so the county can do other stuff in the community.
And I think that the way the board looks at those things is, how many jobs? That's the jobs. That's really the big thing right there. But you're right. I mean, there's investment there and taxable area, but the jobs is the big thing.
Well, and high-paying jobs, good jobs, and if you're listening to this and you're interested in biopharmaceuticals or just having a different career path, they're always hiring. It is not a ton of training. You don't have to. They will train you at the Johnston County Workforce Development Center with whatever they need you to do, and it's really good pay, really good benefits. A lot of really good people work there. I know a ton of good. I like it. Really phenomenal. Yes. Really a phenomenal situation. All right. Well, we've talked about the sheriff. We talked about the schools. We talked a little bit about water and sewer. We're running out of time here. The last one I want to talk about is one people don't see, but I see, is Department of Social Services and sort of how it's structured and what it does. So it has its own board.
Correct.
And its board hires its director.
That's right. By
So
statute, it is a separate board with those responsibilities.
Okay, so they don't, and that director doesn't answer to you.
Does not. Now, she does keep me posted on
Okay.
stuff. So
All right.
we have a great communication. She keeps me in the loop. We have a county commissioner, Mr. Harris, is on that board. So, he keeps us posted too.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the county does provide funding there.
Correct.
So there has to be that kind of communication. But as far as the everyday operations and things of that nature, it is with its own separate board, and I think they meet monthly.
Right. Okay. And our Department of Social Services needs a new building, and has had it and needed a new building for a while. Is that building going to come to fruition?
Well, I think that, right now they're in about 5 buildings, in Smithfield. I do believe that one of the priorities of the board is a new DSS building. The time frame on that to be determined, but yes, that is probably the biggest need when it comes to county facilities.
Right. Okay. Well, that's cool. Yeah. And I guess, is there a plan to build a county administrative building and take the administration out of the courthouse? There was talk of that about 10 years ago, but I haven't heard that lately.
Well, the county purchased land out there, where the new public safety center and the detention center are on 70 East toward Princeton. Bought some land across the street from there for future county facilities. So the land has been purchased to be able to provide that at such time the board decides to do that.
Okay. And at one point the board was talking about maybe going to the landfill and building some buildings, but they're not going to do that.
No, I don't think so. I think the wastewater treatment plant is taking up a lot of space there, and it's a good place for it because they can flow there right back to the river and all that stuff. So, but anyway, yeah, I do think the board's positioned the county well with that property across from the new public safety center for future county facilities. It's just a matter of time frame and what does it cost? How do you plan for it? Things of that nature.
All right. So what would you like to see? I mean, you advise the board does what it wants. You and I've had many conversations, but I'm like, they need to do this. And you're like, they can do what they want. I just work for them. You know what I mean? What is your vision here for the next 2 to 5 years? What are people going to see? What do you want to see them? What do you want people to be looking forward to?
I think what you see is, and sometimes, of course, people talk to me about growth, and it depends on who you talk to about whether or not, I think I tell people all the time, because they'll say, can we slow the growth down, but can we get a target? And I was like, well, to get those kind of commercial entities, you got to have the numbers, for their analysis. So, I think we'll continue to see a lot more commercial growth in Johnston County over the next 5 years. I think DOT is doing a great job with additional road projects that are needed. Matter of fact, when I was driving here today, and the new interchange there right there near the school coming on 1010 near the
Westview Elementary School.
I mean, that's been a great addition. I know it's been there a 3 years.
Yeah, well, right. They just fully opened the intersection there with the exit off of 40 a few months ago.
Yeah, but one thing that I see, and you've interviewed Adrian O'Neill.
Yes, he's phenomenal.
He
absolutely phenomenal.
He was an amazing hire, came from state parks, and I talked to him this morning, and the kind of things that he's looking at doing, I love, and all over the county, opportunities to purchase land for future open space greenways, and those are the kind of things that I think we'll see a lot more of.
Well, and I hope the board will keep moving forward with the Cleveland Park out here. And I've always thought that my grandchildren might play in that park, but I would like to see that park maybe move a little faster than it is moving over the next few years. And maybe this board will figure out a way to fast track that a little faster than it's coming. But I'm glad that the park is going to happen.
Well, the regional park here in Cleveland, this summer, they're going to be starting some work out there with some pickleball courts, maybe a basketball court or two, parking lot areas. You'll see a sort of a phase 1 there.
Right, and that's going to be neat. I mean, he talked about that, and we may have to have Adrian come back on because he was on about a year ago, and we may have to come back. But I know they were going to do the parking lot and maybe a basketball court. They were going to put in a drainage pond and something like that, and maybe pickleball. A fishing pond. That's it.
And one of the things, Adrian has such great relationships, like with Triangle Land Conservancy. We're partnering with them on projects to conserve land. Right. I mean, he's done a great job.
No, Adrian O'Neill has been a tremendous. He's the Parks and Rec director in Johnston County. He was the first person to ever hold that position.
Yes.
He has done a tremendous job. I've thanked the board repeatedly for him being hired, for him getting a budget.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that he could start to put all these different entities together. And he was the right person.
Yes.
At the right time.
That's
and you
right.
don't always get that, but
That's
we
right.
got that in Adrian O'Neill.
And
in my
he
opinion.
also partners and talks with the school folks about ways we can maximize use of ball fields and those kind of things.
Yeah,
so,
he does. He's so nice. He's disarming to people, and he just says he comes at it from how can we make this work?
That's right.
And that's kind of exciting. All right. Well, the last thing we ask everybody, and golly, we could talk for hours and hours and hours, and we'll definitely have to have you back, is what do you love most about Johnston County?
I think I've said this before, it's dynamic, it's electric, and we've got the best of both worlds. We've got growth, but we've also got, agriculture is strong in Johnston County, and that's a great thing. But as people say all the time, people make it great.
Well, we do have the best people, and we grow a ton of sweet potatoes, and hopefully we'll be able to have somebody on to talk about the growing of
Brian
sweet potatoes.
Spivey would be a good one.
Who?
Brian Spivey.
Okay, Brian Spivey. So we'll have to try to reach out to him because I know we grow a lot of sweet potatoes in Johnston County.
Yep.
We would like to thank Rick Hester for coming on and being our guest on this episode of the Best Johnston County Podcast. As we mentioned earlier, go back a couple of weeks and you can listen to the first episode we had on with him where he talked about more about county government and a little bit about the budgeting as well. If you would be so kind as to like, follow, subscribe to this podcast wherever you're seeing it, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, or any of the other social media channels so you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best Johnston County Podcast. That would be great. Leave us a 5-star review. Share this in your Instagram stories and tag us with the Best of Johnston County. And we would be greatly appreciative of that. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.